Thank you, Mr Speaker. I take a call on behalf of New Zealand First on the Companies and Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill. At times, Mr Speaker, one would wonder whether the Honourable Member Chris Tremaine is actually in the same House, because having listened to that previous address and his glowing account of what the government has done in relation to this bill, one really does wonder if he has followed it through. The fact being that the government should be hanging its head in shame in regards to this legislation. Not that it is not good legislation, Mr Hayes from the Wairarapa, but the fact that it has taken so long to get here. The first reading of this bill was on the 24th of July 2012. The second reading of this bill was in July 2013. That was some 2 years after it had been to Cabinet and had been brought to the attention of the Cabinet. That was after, 2 years ago, all parties in this House already agreeing that this legislation needed to be passed. So every governing MP should be hanging their head in shame to say, why has this taken 4 years at least to get to this point, to the third reading, in order to put in place sensible protections in terms of our commerce in New Zealand on the international stage. As a result of the inept incompetence of this government in this area, we were dropped from the whitelist of the European Union. I used to work as a trade commissioner for the government of Flanders and Belgium. I spent 10 years going to and from Brussels and understanding the requirements that the European Union laid down. And it absolutely appalls me, as a previous representative in this country, of Belgium, of Brussels, the capital of the European Union, that this government can be so inept and so slow at passing some legislation that basically is here to assist New Zealand commerce to ensure that corrupt practices do not take place in this country. And as a result of that, we were dropped off the whitelist of the European Union and were taken off what was regarded as a country operating under good corporate government, with good corporate governance oversight. Now, Mr Hayes, if you feel, and you've been in trade many years, Mr Hayes, if you feel, Mr Hayes, that you have acted responsibly as a government in allowing this legislation to take this long to come through this House, leaving this country exposed in the way it has, then I'm sorry, Mr Hayes, but it is no wonder this government is consigning you to greener pastures, because quite frankly, you should have known better. You should have known better, Mr Hayes. Mr Hayes should have been one of the champions to ensure that this got through this House much sooner than it did. Now that I've got your attention again, this bill does close a lot of loopholes and avenues for operators who have flouted the law, such as requiring a director resident in New Zealand, which goes some way. There have been activities of window companies and shell companies operating here in New Zealand, and certainly as a result of this legislation, some of those discrepancies and anomalies will be closed down. The bill also gives the ability to the public to be warned about suspect entities by way of a note in the company's register. The public can be warned about anything that is perhaps of concern, and a red flag can be raised in terms of some of the activities of an entity that may be operating here in this country in that regard. It also increases the fines and brings in imprisonment for a term of not exceeding 5 years or a fine not exceeding $200,000. Again, this sends a strong message internationally that New Zealand will not condone practices of those sorts in this country. The bill basically tidies up a lot of administrative errors in terms of some of the commerce matters under the Limited Partnerships Act and other similar acts to do with commerce and commercial acts. It's a positive move. New Zealand First has always said we will support good policy that tightens up the laws, that supports New Zealand companies and in particular our international trading sector to be competitive on the world stage. New Zealand has a good reputation in terms of corruption. In fact, in recent years, the surveys have shown that we have been consistently number 2 after Finland, who, although after the Aurovita saga this year, one wonders what the ranking will be in the coming year once the international people do an evaluation of what the Aurovita saga has drawn out in this country, and the Minister Judith Collins, her involvement in that. So it'd be very interesting, Mr Speaker, that when our ranking perhaps drops from number 2 to perhaps number 6 or 7, that maybe the Honourable Minister Judith Collins, sitting there at the other side, barking away at the moment, whether she will take responsibility for our loss of integrity in terms of that. Mr Speaker, are you going to intervene in that? I thought incessant interjection was not condoned in this House. Anyway, moving on. Mr Speaker, New Zealand First is pleased to see that this is going through its 3rd reading. We're pleased to see that this will be passed into legislation this evening, and we're pleased that finally this piece of legislation will be on the books for New Zealand. But for ever and a day, this national government should look seriously at itself and ask, why has it taken the best part of 5 or 6 years to ensure that New Zealand commerce is protected to a greater degree in this respect?
Call Dr. Yang.
Mr Speaker, the Companies and Limited Partnerships Amendment Bill addresses the misuse of New Zealand's registration scheme by overseas entities and tightens the criteria for company registration. New Zealand has the best environment for doing business. We enjoy a stable democracy. We have a culture which assigns a high value to fairness, and we also value transparency and clear accountability. And we also have a very sound legal system. So we are a very open economy. This bill will increase our transparency with minimum compliance costs for companies. Only a very small portion of the companies registered in New Zealand will need to adjust circumstances accordingly. And this bill will certainly improve regulation and